Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and thank you all so much for joining us today for our 2018 CAELI Applicant Orientation Webinar. I am James C. Horton, Director of Learning and Leadership Development here at the National Guild for Community Arts Education, and I am joined by John McCann, Designer and Lead Facilitator of CAELI, the Community Arts Education Leadership Institute, also President of Partners in Performance. And I am also joined by our panelists today, Cherie Hill, who is a dance teaching artist as well as a communications and HR manager out at Luna Dance in Berkeley, California. Bruce McCole, Director of Art Education at the Currier Museum of Art in Manchester, New Hampshire. And Karen Shepard, Director of the Maryland campus and Associate Director of Events and Partnerships at Levine Music. Folks that you do not see here, Sheena Yoon, Program Coordinator for the National Guild, and Jessica Sizemore, Program Manager for Partners in Performance. Nothing happens without these two amazing individuals as well. So, before we get started today, a few housekeeping notes. We're going to stop at the end to take questions, but you're going to hear from everybody on here about their experience in CAELI. But if you have questions during the session, I want to encourage you to use the chat box. It's on the right-hand side of the screen toward the bottom of your toolbar. Just type it on in there, and we will hold on to those questions. Some of them we may have time to answer during the actual session, but type them on in, and we'll get back to you and make sure that we get those answered. And before we get started, I'd like to find out who's on the call today. So, as far as your role in your organization, which best describes you? Take a minute and just click on those in there. Looks like we have everybody's a CEO or executive director. Got some program folks here today. A few communications folks, some other. If you haven't done so already, please click on it. I'd love to know who's here today. Thank you so much. I'm going to close that in about 2 more seconds. And let's see who's here. Awesome. So it looks like the majority of folks who are on the call today are program and ed directors. That's really cool. And then I have one other question for you before we get started. How many of you have had a chance to speak to or just meet with or know a CAELI alum? Always curious about that. There's about 200 CAELians out there, as I've come to call them. Just want to know who's talking about the program and who you've had a chance to speak to. All right, I'm going to close that in a second and share those results out. All right, so it looks like the majority of folks on the call today have not had a chance to speak to a CAELI alum, which is actually good news because now is your opportunity. So without further ado, I would love to turn things over to my friend and colleague, John McCann, who is going to guide us through today's CAELI applicant orientation. John, thank you so much.
Thank you, James, and thanks everybody for joining in today. This is the commencement of what is the richest part of our personal and professional endeavor every year, is just to begin the conversations around CAELI. And for those of you who may not know, we're entering into the 9th year of the program this year, and to have as many of you as on today as interested in the program is just marvelous. So I'm going to speak for just a minute about the program just from 30,000 foot level, and then open up the conversation with Cherie and Bruce and Karen. It's terrific to have so many of you join us today. And I want to say it's especially fun for me because this program is by far my most rewarding professional experience. And each year, I look forward to the summer, the beauty of the Bryn Mawr campus, and what I call, and what some other people have referred to as, the restful intensity of the time we have together there. I just love that phrase that people have coined to describe their time together at Bryn Mawr in the summer, the restful intensity. CAELI's objectives and design is based on one fundamental premise, that leadership is not so much a position, but moreover, it's about ways of working that can and should be practiced by folks across the organization, executive and artistic folks, program managers, department heads, teachers, and artists. And we define that leadership work quite simply as behaving in ways that bring people together to move things forward. And in support of that relatively simple definition of leadership, behaving in ways that bring people together to move things forward, CAELI is built around 5 learning outcomes that we commit ourselves to each year. One of those is to really help you as a participant identify your core values. What is most important to you in your life's endeavor, and how those really influence behavior and decision making, particularly in our relationship to our organizations. The second is to increase the awareness that we all have about the characteristics of effective leadership. The third, to deepen each person's understanding of their strengths and weaknesses. We all have them. So to deepen our understanding of strengths, weaknesses, and the preferences we have in getting good things done in the world. The fourth is to identify our own biases and really understand our own biases, and to understand how power and privilege play out in today's workplace, and in particular when organizations such as ours are working with constituencies as broad as we are every year. And then finally, to create a plan, for you actually to create a plan during this time that you can really own, that will identify what your specific goals are and your own priorities over the next while in your own leadership journey. So in pursuit of those, the first step in advancing those is to take stock for yourself and to hear from others about what you are doing currently that's proving effective, and what would be improved upon if you were to put your shoulder behind your own leadership journey. And to do this, we use a 360-degree feedback process where during May and June, you would identify somewhere between 10 or 15 people, some of which might report directly to you, maybe your supervisor, maybe even a couple of board members, depending on where you are within the organization, and even peers in the community or peers in the field. And over a few weeks, they are asked to complete an online instrument responding to some primary leadership dimensions like communications, decision-making, the management of conflict. And all of this is kept completely confidential and just for you. And then when we gather at Bryn Mawr in July, you get your individual report, and it provides really, really good guidance on how you can effectively use, in a very intentional way, the 5 days together. Bryn Mawr, by the way, is simply beautiful. Green, lush, pastoral. You have your own room in one of the cozy and historic dormitories, and we work most days from 9 to 5. Some days are a bit longer, including some time for you to really get to know and bond with your CAELI class, a total of 25 folks, and work with 8 really committed and helpful guides who serve as our faculty for the week. 4 of those folks have been working with us a while. Ronnie Brooks has been working with us since the beginning of the program, and Ronnie serves also as the director of the Shannon Leadership Institute in the Twin Cities, and has worked most of her professional life in helping develop leaders. Ama Kojo, who is a social justice consultant and trainer, formerly with DreamYard in New York, and has worked with us over the past 3 years. Mary Parrish, who is an executive and leadership coach, works in many, many different arenas of leadership, and has been working with us now for 5 of our 8 years. Craig Coble, who just joined us last year, who's in Washington, D.C., a remarkable individual that I've gotten to work with a good bit before his invitation to join the CAELI team last year. And he also works with Mary as one of our 2 coaches. And then there are also 3 folks from the field. These would be your peers and people who are alumni of the CAELI program, who, in the view of the Guild and in view of their peers, really do embody a lot of the effective leadership practice that we talk about, discuss, and engage around over the course of the program. And this year we would be joined by Alex Sarian, who is the Senior Director at Lincoln Center Education, by Delashay Straughter, who's the Associate Artistic Director and Director of Music Programs at the marvelous Mosaic Youth Theater in Detroit, and Carol Z, who comes to us from Reset Consulting, an enterprise that she has started recently, but she's also the co-founder and founding artistic director of the Gabriella Foundation in Los Angeles. So you're in good hands working with marvelous people during our 5 days together at Bryn Mawr. And when you think about this time together, I'd ask you not to think of the week. Don't think of school or seminar. Think about actually doing things, being on your feet, engaging with your peers. And here's how a couple of participants have described this in their time there. One person said, having this time away from my day-to-day life to learn, to reflect, to reconnect with my best self has been a godsend at a time when I most needed it. This experience will shape the rest of my life. Another person shared, being in such a beautiful location with good food and comfortable surroundings reinforced the repeated message to take care of and respect ourselves. So a good time is had and hard work is done at Bryn Mawr every summer. So the 360-degree feedback process as sort of the entry point into our time together at Bryn Mawr, the 5 days together with your colleagues and the faculty guides that I spoke about. And then you move into a coaching process for the next few months, and you would be working either with Craig or with Mary, and their bios are on the Guild website. You can certainly look up and read more about their coaching experience. And also, there is now this growing CAELI alumni network, which James referred to, which when you conclude the work in the program, if you decide to move into CAELI or apply this year in 2018, a group of 225 folks, and there is, I think, more connective tissue being built over time. Peer groups. I know Ronnie Brooks and I did a peer-to-peer session in San Francisco last year where we had 30-some of the 200 alumni join in that day. So there's the peer work over a lifetime, but you would also enter the peer group work after finishing up your time at Bryn Mawr. So 360-degree feedback, the time together at Bryn Mawr, leaving with your own discrete learning plan that you would be working with your coach, the coaching process, and the peer network. So you leave Bryn Mawr with new friends, allies for life, a learning plan which identifies for you the 1, 2, or 3 specific areas of your work around which you want to focus. And that learning plan would guide you through the engagement with your leadership coach over the next few months. So that's some of the learning outcomes, a bit of the history and the 5 core elements of the program. And now to give some meaning behind this and to speak from their own lived experience, we'd like to turn to our 3 guests today, and we're so happy that they have agreed to join us. And Cherie, maybe we could hear a bit from you about maybe why CAELI, what the experience was like, and what you found really matters about the program to you since your participation last year. And then we'll hear from Bruce and then from Karen.
Great, thank you, John. Good morning, everyone who is on the West Coast, and good afternoon to everyone who is more on the Midwest, East Coast. My name is Cherie, and I am a dance teaching artist, chief of staff, and communications human resources manager at Luna Dance Institute, which is a nonprofit dance education organization in Berkeley, California. And I was brought to CAELI through a few different kind of sources. One was our organization is a 26-year-old organization that is growing and experiencing a place of transition right now. our two directors who make up the executive team are the co-founders, founder and co-founder of the organization. And after that, we have a management tier, which consists of myself and two other managers, and then we have our faculty. And the management tier, our experience with the organization is between 4 to 6 years. So there's a big gap between the executive team and us. And as our directors are looking to transition from the organization within the next 5 to 10 years, they're really starting to think about succession and internal leadership development. So that was one reason why it was kind of brought forward to me about CAELI. I was approached by my directors asking if, more leadership was something I was interested in, if development was something I was interested in, and I said yes, I definitely was. I also last year was at a place in my job, which all of us here work full-time and we all teach. We're dance educators as well as have administrative roles, which is a very unique business model in arts education. But a lot of us come in with a lot of experience teaching. We also are all artists and choreographers. And I didn't have as much of the administrative experience. I feel like, I've been learning as I go about what it means to be a chief of staff, what it means to really direct people and interpersonal relationships. And I was at a place where I really wanted more help with that. So our director of community engagement, who knew about CAELI and has heard lots of great stories about CAELI, recommended that I apply. And I did the webinar like you guys are today, and I was really inspired to be able to be a part of the program. So I applied and I was accepted. And I was surprised I was accepted and really excited, but I also really didn't know what to expect. I have not had any kind of formal, I would say, leadership coaching or leadership training. I was also in a place where I would say, yes, I'm a leader, I've led things, but I didn't really identify myself to be a leader, and I still wasn't sure what it really meant to be a leader. And one of the things that were really eye-opening for me during the week was that first day when John really goes into explaining what does it mean to be a leader, what does leadership really entail. And I really loved all of the different reasons and definitions that went into being a leader. It was exciting for me, and it also helped change my perspective of what could happen for me in this next place in my life, moving into more leadership within the organization and within my own personal interest as well. So that was a big just aha moment for me, was to be like, oh wow, like this is what leadership is, this is what it means. Also, what was really special is the fact that when you're in CAELI, you're not alone. You're with 24 other people in the room who are in similar places as you. And we're multi-generational, we have different titles, we have different things we're dealing with, but we all share this this drive to want to develop, to want to grow, and to want to learn more and to become better leaders. And that was so valuable for me. I still am very connected to my cohort, and they also gave me definitions of what it meant to be a leader, to see all of these diverse faces in the room, to have people that could relate to me and also could be of support, was really impactful and really profound. And I still, we all are still connected. We still email each other or are on our Facebook group, kind of supporting each other, letting each other know what happens. And I feel like I've made colleagues for life, basically, that really understand where I'm coming from and that want to support me and be there for me. And that has been definitely a game changer on my path and my journey to leadership here in the organization. a lot of things I learned in CAELI were new to me, and I want to do them all. And I feel like you learn, it's very, you take in everything you can. It's an intensive week, but it's filled with a lot of joy and a lot of growth. And then some things I took from CAELI and I just put them into practice right away. I felt like I came in, definitely I had more courage was a big thing that stood out, more courage that I could do the job, that my decisions and my thinking mattered, and more appreciation and empathy also for my staff and where we're headed within the organization. And then also things like what's really percolating for me right now are core values. We did a whole day on core values and self-renewal, and that was really big for me because I never really thought about what my own personal core values were. And I've been on a journey because it was something I wanted to figure out. I was like, I want to know what are my 3 own core values that I really stand by and live by and want to work towards, and that I exemplify in my job and in my daily life. And I remember going to the CAELI alumni retreat at the National Guild Conference this past year and still saying, like, I'm still figuring it out, I'm trying things on. I also talked to my coach, who is Craig, about it, and he gave me some things to think about. And I feel like just now, this past month, I have 3 core values that really resonate with me and that I'm just having a blast living and knowing, you know, being conscious of them. And this last week, I led a meeting with staff that was about promotion, but what I wanted to do was really get to what the heart of our organization is and connect staff's values with our organizational values. So I led a meeting doing that and just talking about what brings us meaning in this work. What do we value and how can we see ourselves within the organization, with the goal of being able to speak more about what we do here from an authentic and meaningful place. And, you know, I have other examples like that from CAELI that I've done with staff that I just wouldn't have done before I went to CAELI. I wouldn't have known how to approach it. I wouldn't have had as much confidence and courage to really take a task that my directors are giving me and to make it my own and to share what's valuable to me and to share that with staff in staff development. So that's one story that just CAELI has really helped me become and grow into the leader that I really want to be.
Wow. Cherie, I wonder, you mentioned courage. That was a theme, I think, that went through much of your conversation now. And you also mentioned coaching. I wonder, when you're thinking about doing things that are going to require a good amount of courage, could you link that in any way to the coaching relationship? Are they connected in some way? Because the things that you may be doing, or certainly after you left, the bonds that you had at Bryn Mawr, where you have 25 people together, now you go back to the organization, you're on your own, you're doing your work there, but a relationship between the coaching and how it might support or in any way bolster the courage part?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Definitely. I definitely see the connections between my relationship with my coach, who was Craig, and the courage to continue forward in my position. I really loved the sessions I had with my coach. And one of the last sessions, Craig told me, I really want you to leave these coaching sessions knowing that you have the tools you need and you have an inner voice that can tell you you're doing good and that you can do it. You can accomplish what you set forth, you can succeed. And that's kind of what Craig was for me, especially as right now we're talking about transition and we're talking about new positions and restructuring the hierarchy that's here. I tended to have self-doubt at times, and I would ask Craig to have a coaching session, and he would just go over things with me and be like, what do you see as success? How do you feel about this? Where are you going? This is a way to present what you want to do. And it really gave me that courage and confidence to be able to go into the room and feel confident in myself. So they're definitely, for me, yes, it's definitely connected.
Great. Cherie, thank you for just making that link even more obvious. And those of you who are on with us today, as questions might pop into your mind as you're hearing from Cherie and from Bruce and from Kara, just jot those into the text box so that we'll have those into the chat box. So we'll have those and we'll feed those back into the panelists. But with thanks to Cherie, we'll move on to Bruce, if we might. Bruce, we're not hearing you. You might be muted.
Yep, I'm here. Hi, John. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'm the Director of Art Education at the Currier Museum of Art, and in short, we are a museum in a mid-sized city in northern New England that serves a very diverse community. I oversee both the art education program that's situated in the museum, but interestingly, the Currier also has an art school, the Currier Art Center, which is a 80-year-old studio program that abuts the museum and provides enrichment in art education in a studio-based way. So it's a very dynamic institution. Education here is critical. It's always been critical to the core mission of the museum, which was opened in 1929. The goal of the museum and the Art Center has always been to inspire the community with a special focus on children. So that's sort of the story of the Currier and my story. I came to CAELI 5 years ago at a really critical time, both in my professional and personal life, but also in the life of the institution that I serve. In so much as at that moment, we were becoming more and more community focused. And the work of the school that I was then the director of was more and more successfully embedding itself into the community through really vibrant programs that served all kinds of populations. And so we were at a critical sort of growth point in 2013, and I was being asked to join the executive team at the museum. So we were going through a bit of a dynamic strategic change at that moment. And I think both the board and the trustee that I work with at the board that's focused on education and our then director thought it was important that I have an opportunity to focus on myself as a leader. Subsequently, I was invited to oversee all of education at the Currier, which translates into overseeing school tour programs for 7,000 students a year, school students a year, and studio-based programs for over 2,000 students a year, a quarter of whom, well, actually 35% of whom are here tuition free. So that's the story. And I came to CAELI feeling that I needed more support to be a more effective leader. And I couldn't have gone at a better time. I went with an open heart, a fair bit of vulnerability, and a real desire to learn. And CAELI did not disappoint me. It's not far-fetched for me to say that my experience with CAELI was one of the best educational experience I've ever had in my life. And I really feel like those 5 weeks at Bryn Mawr transformed me. And to the extent that when I came back to my life here in New Hampshire, I was changed. And I was changed in so many ways. But I think you know, the focus at CAELI is on distinguishing and helping you discover your, as Cherie mentioned and discussed, your core values. and how do those core values translate into the work that you do in your community. And the program also invites you to discover strengths in asking tough questions, finding strength in your vulnerability as a human and as a leader and an artist and a creative person, and giving you the tools to communicate more effectively, both with strength and with vulnerability at the same time. And I found all of those lessons to be, for me, both in my professional life and my personal life, to be absolutely transformative. And I use those lessons today. So I have a long list of things that I want to share, but I know that I have to be brief. The cohort was tremendous. I'm still in touch with a number of people, and while we were together some 5 years ago, when we got together 2 years ago in Philadelphia, it was though we had been together the day before, and it was really easy and fun and restorative to get back together. I loved the work that I did personally with Mary. She was my coach. Having those 4 to 6 months of post-CAELI coaching helped to reaffirm and reiterate what I had learned while I was in the Bryn Mawr campus, which again, I needed, because I was doing, once I got back to campus here, I took some of the more critical lessons that I'd learned, and I helped to lead here at the Courier a fairly transformative 6-month focused period on what our institutional core values are. And then, so that led to really transformative work in establishing core values as an institution among my peers, which then led 2 years ago to redesigning and focusing on a new mission. So some of the tools that I was given at CAELI, I put right into practice immediately when I got back to Manchester to help lead the Courier forward. So, you know, those are some of the big things that I came away with. One of the great lessons that I continue to think about, and even in the last year, I was in touch with John about this, relative to a new innovative program that we're doing at the Courier, was the idea that good leaders lead. They lead with creativity, they lead with passion, but they also should and can lead with some vulnerability, and with the sense that it is okay to fail. When you work from your core values, and when you know that the work that needs to be done has substance and value, but you also understand that it may not work, it is okay to take that challenge and to take the risk to try something new. And in the last year, we did some fairly innovative, transformative work with another national organization to develop a program that serves parents whose children have substance use disorder. I couldn't have sort of wrapped my brain and heart around this program if I hadn't been to CAELI, and I struggled with designing the program. I struggled with how to design it with integrity and honesty and compassion. But over the course of 9 months working with educators in New York and my educators here, we came up with a curriculum that we put into practice 2 weeks ago, and the program is running beautifully, and it's really helping parents. And so that's, for me, living now as an educator and as a leader, I can say that the work that I did in CAELI with my cohort, with John, with Ronnie, with Mary, was work that helped me have I guess the bravery and the courage to go forward, to try something that could be transformative, and to believe in myself and my team. So those were my big takeaways. One last thing I want to say is, one of the other things that we do at CAELI is to focus on how do you sustain yourself over the long term, so that personal enrichment and self-care are critical ingredients to the training. And quite honestly, I think about that every week when I'm doing my work here. Like, when do I need to take a break? When do I need to walk away and restore myself so that I can be the best leader I can be for the people that I serve? And so CAELI gave me the permission to think, not selfishly, but selfishly for myself, but rather selfishly for the people that I serve, so that I can be the best professional, educator, artist, and even the best parent that I can be. And CAELI gave me the permission to think that way. So for me, those are the big takeaways. And I still, like, I will always be a CAELian and will feel quite, feel very strongly toward the program and what it did for me and the people that work for me.
Bruce, thank you very much. And I know I've read a bit about this new program that you launched, and it is such a new endeavor for a museum, and I know for a courier, and knowing that there's a link between your participation in the program and what it took to keep moving that forward is a good story to hear. So thank you. We might come back to that during the Q&A. So Karen, how about hearing from you?
Sure. So I have a smile from ear to ear just listening to my wonderful colleagues and Bruce and Cherie, and we're not in the same cohort, as you all know, but the experiences are similar and so genuine. So I echo what they have said. So I am the head of our Maryland campuses for Levine Music, and I love the photo that I see here. That was when I started here like 12 years ago. I love it. Keep it. But I run our Maryland operations for Levine. We are a nonprofit community music school that has been around for more than 40 years. And I have spearheaded the growth in Montgomery County, and we've just opened a new campus and are really experiencing a huge bit of growth now. When I participated in the CAELI program, it was the class of 2011, so I was the second year of the program. I love the visuals and the beautiful pastoral views of Bryn Mawr. I was at Drexel, which was a little different energy in terms of how we found the peaceful great outdoors, but it was really incredible relationship building. And again, like my colleague said, it sort of came to me at the perfect time in my path. And I found the opportunity through the Guild website and was actively seeking opportunities to really engage more deeply with the Guild, but also with the institution at large. We have 5 campuses in the DC metro area. So it is that balance of having an institutional presence and ability to sort of have a bigger vision and bigger impact can be a challenge when people are spread across multiple parts of a city. So it really came to me at the perfect time. I had also taken on the responsibilities of our events and partnerships piece of our programming. So looking at this question of sort of how can one affect meaningful change when you may only be partially empowered to do so was sort of a huge piece of the thinking for me as I joined the program. And I think looking at the on-site training, John and James and the whole team really set a tone from the very beginning that it was a no judgment environment, and it set such a beautiful framework for successful self-exploration and allowed sort of learning with open arms that I know Bruce talked about too, and looking at how everyone is on an equal playing field, whether you know, titles aside, we're all there to do some deep dives into ourselves and our leadership styles and how we can grow. And everybody comes from a real sense of generosity of self and of giving ideas, and really just genuine interest in growth. I think the sessions really created productive conversations with tools, and there's some very specific tools, and then there's some very talking about your core values and sort of bigger picture things as well. But I think everybody was really there from the same, we sort of started from the same baseline interest level. One of the sessions on site that I found really impactful was sort of how to create a productive conversation. There's a lot of role play. You can see the photo now. There's a lot of wandering around a room and finding something that speaks to you and taking the time to quietly reflect upon that and why that is impactful. And then I'll touch briefly on sort of post-workshop. It's, I think being a part of this community really created, it's like an instant network of advisors, sort of regardless of what graduating class you are, this program of alums, it's sort of, if you find someone who's in a similar place or you get a recommendation of, John will say, oh, I just was working with someone and they're in a really similar circumstance, give them a call. And even if it's not in your group, you just pick up the phone or drop an email and say, hey, I'm a CAELIan. Here's my, here's where I could really use some guidance. And it's really beautiful. And I actually had a conversation earlier this week with someone who was from my cohort, and it's just a really great touch point. So this community for follow-up, guidance, and reflection is really special, and I think unique to this program. The faculty, some have been there since I was there, some are new, but they're all genuinely interested in you and what you are giving and the gifts that you bring to the table. And it allows each person there to feel that they are truly valued and they have a lot to give. And it allows for this really beautiful exploration. And they are there for you, whenever possible as new challenges arise. And having that knowledge that you always have someone in your corner is really, really meaningful and has gotten me through a lot, which has been great. And then the last thing I'll sort of mention is the opportunity for these follow-up workshops, and they're multi-year groups. So, we just had one this past summer, and I had not been able to take advantage of one earlier, but some are web-based and some are on-site, so I was able to see the beautiful Bryn Mawr location, which is great. And they really create a perfect touch point for reflection and recentering, especially for someone like me who participated such a long time ago. It was really great to have this instant connection with a baseline level of understanding that everybody went through the experience, whether we were together experiencing that or not. It just further deepened that connection. And now I've had multiple colleagues at Levine participate in the program, and we are collectively affecting real positive change together. And we can understand, we'll come out of a meeting and be like, I remember we talked about that with Ronnie, or I remember John mentioned this, and we can point at that and really see that it's made an impact in how we manage a meeting, whether we're in it together or leading it on our own. So that's been really lovely that connectivity institutionally has provided a real support and I think strength for the organization. So those are sort of my big points. I know we were short on time, so I set a timer. I've hit my 5 minutes.
Okay. Karen, thank you. And Levine may hold the record for the most number of people from a single organization who have participated in CAELI. We'll have to check the records and see, but thank you. One of the questions that arises, and I think we get consistently each year, is about the 360-degree feedback process, only because it is quite new for many people. People are often accustomed to an annual performance review, which is very quantitative in nature and very retrospective. But the 360-degree feedback process is set up to be much more prospective about what it is that you might pay attention to and work on that will indeed increase the effectiveness of your own leadership. So I wonder if you each might speak briefly, and I think by briefly we're talking maybe 30 seconds, just speak to, if you would, the influence of the 360-degree feedback process and results on your own leadership journey. So we could take that maybe in reverse order. Maybe Karen, we could start with you, and then Bruce, and then Cherie, and then we'll turn back to James.
Sure. I remember being equally excited and petrified of the process. It was sort of, do I bring out a box of tissues to read what's really going on? But that quickly went by the wayside. It was an incredibly informative tool, and I think it speaks to what I talked about earlier in terms of this genuine sense of honesty and openness to learning. And it really set the tone to prepare you to absorb as much as possible, and also reflect on maybe something you didn't realize made a big impact on others in a real positive way. It allowed me to sort of embrace that and own it a little bit more than I maybe did beforehand. And that balance was a good thing.
Great. So Bruce, about 30 seconds on the 360 and its influence.
Yeah, I think well, we start, CAELI, with the review of the 360, which is quite a way to start the program, but it does sort of center you in both your strengths and your weaknesses as a leader and as a colleague, and I think it sort of sets the stage for really what you need to focus on that week. So if you have weaknesses that are discovered in the 360, it gives you the opportunity to ask those tough questions about yourself, like, and how can I do that better, So I think it's a wonderful way of opening that door. It feels safe to do it there. It's the means by which it's done is very well done and very objective. And you're hearing from your colleagues, and they just want to support you to be the best you can be. So I think it's just a wonderful experience and opportunity to assess and then to move forward and improve.
Right. And Cherie, you did this more recently than the other two folks. How about for you, the 360 and its value, its influence?
Hi, sorry about that. Yes, sorry. Yes, I can speak to that, and I agree with Karen and Bruce. At first it felt kind of terrifying, like, oh my gosh, my directors, the board, my peers, these people are going to be evaluating me, but it was so helpful. And for me, it showed some surprises. It showed things that I was doing that I didn't realize I was doing that people were really picking up on. Which was great. And it also showed some things that I was doing that people didn't think I was doing, and revealed to me, wow, there's work for me to do here, not only on myself, but also on how people see me and see the work I'm doing and what they know about what I'm doing. So I found it very informative to go forward with.
Great. Well, thank the three of you immensely for both giving the preparation to this and also the time and goodwill today. It means a lot, not only to the program, but to the field. So I think with that, James, we'll turn back to you.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you to all three of you. There's one question that came up several times that I'd like to pose to the group, and you can talk a little bit more about the coaching, sort of what goes into it, what has come of it, but also sort of the peer-to-peer connection. And I know, Cherie, we've been a little bit more intentional about including it in your year, so maybe you can answer that part. But just throwing it out to everyone, if you can talk a little bit more about the coaching, that would be great.
James, who do you want us to start with?
Bruce, since you chimed in, that would be awesome.
That's great. The coaching was terrific. As I mentioned earlier, Mary was my coach, and we had a good 6 months together. I always look forward to those conversations. CAELI had, invited me to really take long-term assessment of my behaviors at the workplace, how I can be most effective, and it put into practice for me a real distinct, objective practice of self-assessment. So so over the course of those 6 months post CAELI, I was taking notes when I was having trouble in the workplace, when conversations weren't going as I would want them to go, when I wasn't leading as effectively. I would, jot down these notes, and I knew that I'd have that hour-long conversation that I was looking forward to with Mary, and that Mary, who had, I'd gotten to know at CAELI, could then give me some real honest feedback, but also ask me the tough questions that lead to sort of core strengths and the addressing of core weaknesses in my constitution as a leader. So I think over the course of those 6 months, that work with Mary helped to affirm what I had learned at CAELI. It helped give me courage in the everyday at my workplace. And quite honestly, I was terrified to leave Mary, because I knew that I was such a better leader having had that once a month conversation. But I moved ahead, forward. But I still, I think about Mary, think about those conversations, and I've looked for other mentors in my community who are like Mary, that can give me that feedback. So I think I'm a better connector in that way, focused on how I can be a better leader. And looking for those folks in my own community who can give me the feedback that I think that I need to be the best that I can be.
Great. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Oh,
yes,
I can speak quickly to the peer-to-peer. Yeah, this is Sheree. So just to get like a visualization, we're at Bryn Mawr for 5 days working together. Basically, you're there for 24 hours, right? Except when you're not sleeping, and you can go to your own room. But besides that, you're in a room working with 24 other people through these really big concepts and ideas. And I feel like just having that 5 days of intense time really helps you bond. And also there's times to get to know each other that are embedded within the curriculum over the 5 days. But you really come out knowing your cohort, knowing people, having conversations, knowing their weaknesses that they've shared and their strengths and how they see you. And our group really was able to bond together. The last day of the retreat, we each took time to hug every single person before we left the room. So I think it was like probably almost an extra hour that we spent like seriously hugging every person, because we had been through such a cathartic experience and we experienced it together. And I think we realized that we are the support for each other as we go on into our own lives. So we also that day set up a Facebook group. A few people really stepped up and were like, I want to make sure we stay connected. And so we have a Facebook group we post on. I've seen a couple of my cohort when I've gone to conferences in their cities. I contact them and say, hey, can I come see your space? Can we have tea and catch up? So it's really been an added value and help to my own leadership development to have my cohort there and to be connected with such great people.
Very good. Thank you so much, Sheree. So just to speed us ahead, a few things we want to get out the way and make sure that you have a clear understanding about to move forward with your application to the program. A couple questions came in around completing a compelling application. So one thing that we really want to see is that you communicate a demonstrated leadership potential. And I'll couple that with demonstrated commitment to a career in community arts education. So this is sort of looking at your resume and your body of work, right? We know that we are much more than our resumes, but we'd love to see what you have done in the field of community arts education. So we ask for that. And then we ask that the potential applicant be an active and engaged participant. So of course, show up on site at the Bryn Mawr program, but being able to have that space and permission from your organization to actually dig deep into this learning, to have those one-on-one coaching sessions, to do some of that peer work that'll happen post-institute. It's really important that your organization understands the time commitment that's involved in that and gives you the space to be able to have that I call it that intentional reflection period that you'll need to appropriately apply some of this teaching and learning and some of the values that you'll explore and dig into your day-to-day work and in your life. And then, of course, how will your organization support your participation? Again, that's one of those things, to being able to give you time and also fund it. Right. The program itself, you can look on the Guild's website to see sort of the financials behind it. But Guild members do receive a pretty significant discount in terms of registration fees. And then there's sort of a blanket fee for room and board, being able to be a part of the program. To apply, super easy to do. $50 application fee. I think that there's also a sense of readiness when applying to the program. So I think that's sort of a self-inventory, taking self-stock and making sure that you are indeed ready to face yourself. One of the most difficult things that we will do, I think, in this journey of life. And then we ask that you put together a 2-page statement or a 3-minute video that responds to the following 3 questions. Why is participating in CAELI important at this stage of life in your career? What is an instance when someone gave you feedback or other guidance that you found helpful? And how did this influence the way you think about your role and how you work with others? And what are your dreams? What are your dreams for how you will impact the future of community arts education? This is one of those things, I think it's only as useful as much as you can turn out and really share it with the rest of the world and the communities that we all serve as community arts educators. Of course, your resume, and then a letter of recommendation from someone in your organization or board or even community member, how they know you, why they think you would be a great candidate, and again, how your organization will support your participation, cover participation fees, and make time for you to do this work. I cannot stress that enough, as having the time to really be completely present, not have to respond to emails during your breaks, but being able to put your phone down and be completely present in those precious moments. Because again, it's one of those things, when you're present, you allow other folks who are there to be present as well. Financing your participation. So this is something that I'm proud to say that the Guild Board has really gotten behind. There's a significant amount of financial aid available. We offer up to 50% of the tuition fees to be a part of the program, so we'll help you out there. And then this is pretty new. We're able to offer travel stipends now. So depending on where you're coming from around the country, we're able to reimburse you for some airfare, rail, even gas in some cases. A lot of folks who come in from out west will come a day earlier, just to alleviate any travel difficulties that they may see for the weather. That's about it, folks. I want to encourage you all, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to John or myself or one of our 3 panelists today, whom I want to say thank you so much to. Cherie, Bruce, Karen, and of course, John, 9 years. It's just phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Folks, we will be in touch. And if you have any questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out and keep an eye out for an email. We'll send these slides along. This is recorded and will be on the Guild's website if you want to reference it later on. Again, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks, James. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you again.